I don't even know where to start. First of all, I need some back support because I feel like this is going to be a long video, okay? So back support. Okay, so I finally want to sit down and reflect about my university experience and if I feel like my degree was worth it. That's what I want to cover. So the way I'm going to try to do this is I'm going to go through each year. So I spent 5 years at university, so I'll go through year 1 to 5 and how I felt during each year. And then at the end, I'll give an overall, like how I ended my university and how I feel about it now. Like with everything done and over with, how do I feel about it at the end? I'm gonna try to go through my hard drive and find any relevant photos and clips that I've taken over the years and insert them here so you get an idea, can kind of visualize what I'm visualizing when I talk about things. And that way, you know, you see what I went through. The why I want to do it from year 1 to, and my window's open. I always leave my window open because it gets so hot in here, but also free background noise. Anyways, so why I want to do it this way is you will naturally see the way I progress through the years, and my overall reflection at the end will make a lot of sense to you. Like it will seem very natural to you, and I can literally hear another car come. I don't know if I want to suffer in the heat or suffer in the noise. Okay, so with that said, let's talk about year 1. But before that, let's open up the kombucha because this is gonna be a long video and I need something. I need kombucha, okay? I need kombucha. Just like people go like, oh, I need a drink, I need kombucha for this, okay? This is mango passion. I don't think I've tried this flavor before, so let's give it a shot. Kombucha just hits. Why is this so good? Why is this always so good? I don't understand. Okay, anyways, year 1, let's go. Now for each year, I'm going to try to cover 2 overarching themes, kind of like academics versus kind of the experience. So let's just get one thing out of the way at the very beginning. I've always been, alhamdulillah, academically gifted. And so I didn't go into university thinking, oh my god, this is gonna be kind of like the end all be all, I'm gonna drop in my grades, blah blah blah. You know how everyone in university scares you that you're gonna enter university, doesn't matter if you're like a 90 student or whatever, you will drop and you're gonna get C's and blah blah blah. And that is common, but I do think if you're a strong academic student, it is not impossible to do well in university. It is not at all. If you put in the work and you put in the time, it is not hard to do well. And that sounds that's addicting me right there. Put in the hard work so it's not hard to get good grades. But you know what I'm talking about, okay? On the contrary, in high school, I don't think intelligence and being a nerd was as valued as it is in university, if I'm being honest with you. And even just from the my first year, I really felt like I could shine. Like that was my strength. My strength was thinking about things, thinking about systems, breaking apart systems, asking questions, trying to understand concepts, trying to understand the world. And I could really let that shine in university, even in these really big first year classes. Like we're talking 400 plus students only in my block. So at U of C, when I was in first year, I believe we had 4 blocks, so like 4 big engineering first year groups. I was in, I think, block 4, and just one block had, I think, around 200 to 400 students. I can't remember what the range was, but it was a lot of people, okay? So even among so many people, I really felt like I could use my strengths and just like be proud about being a nerd because nerds run the world. So I never doubted my abilities in that sense. And although there were many classes that I had to work ridiculously hard for, and I am calling out Lasso here. Okay, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I took a legal studies class, like a law and society course. A law and society course for one of my option courses. I got 2 option courses. One of them was law and society, and that course probably harder than the notorious second year engineering physics course, and that is a notoriously difficult physics course. Okay, I struggled, and this Lasso course was harder. But despite all of that, I never doubted myself academically. This discussion that we're having here is not going to be centered around me growing, you know, from C's to A's or whatever, right? It's more holistic than that. I want to just get that out of the way right away. Now, the more I succeeded academically, the more socially awkward I was. You know, I've never been the popular kid, and I've never wanted to be the popular kid. That's just not who I am. But, and I say that as a matter of fact, right? There's nothing good or bad in it. But we can all agree that life is just a lot easier when you fit in and you understand social dynamics, and you can just easily work around social situations. Like, let's admit it, life is so much easier for extroverts and popular kids. My brain, especially in this new environment with a gazillion stimulants coming in and a gazillion new faces every single day, and that's those are obviously hyperboles, but I'm trying to exaggerate to show how I felt in that environment. It was exhausting. It was exhausting socially because I saw with my own eyes, and we all know this, how much easier experiences and school is when you have a lot of friends to help you with stuff, to help you get through assignments and problems and study for tests and all that jazz. Lab groups, like I was constantly like, oh my god, okay, I have a new lab group, who am I going to be with, are they going to do this, because you want to make sure that your lab group is also putting in the work. So it was just so stressful. Socially, it was so stressful. Year 1, first year, was about surviving, honestly. It was about finding my footing. It wasn't even about finding my footing. It was trying to find my footing, because I most definitely did not in first year, okay? It was trying to understand this new environment that I'm in, and also meet my own personal goals, and also try to somehow be socially accepted so that my life would be easier. Because I saw life was so much easier for people that had multiple friends in engineering. One thing to know, I kind of want to paint a picture here. I'm trying to paint a story as we go through this, okay? So you really feel like what I went through. And not in like a bad way, oh my god, this is what I went through, but like kind of show you the storyline. First year, if I was not in classes, I was at the library. TFDL to be specific. And when I say I was at the library, that means I woke up 20 minutes before leaving. That means I woke up maybe 7:30, and bless my dad for driving me to university and picking me up most days, that I would be at uni by 8 a.m. TFDL, 8 a.m. every single day, regardless of my class schedule, and then I would stay there till 9 p.m. at night, just working. And like, that was my life. Classes, labs, library. And I mean like 6th floor, quiet zone. If you talk, I will come and tell you to stop type of life, okay? Now, albeit at the time, my best friend of the time would study with me till 9 p.m. Like, we both liked to stay at the library, but I was the one there at 8 a.m. There's no way she would have woken up at 8 a.m. But that was the life. I don't regret the way I spent first year. Obviously, I could have optimized it with the way I've grown over the years, I know that I could have had a better experience, but I also know that with so much stress, you want to give yourself the space to just breathe. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to stay afloat and achieve my top priority goals, which were mainly to do well in classes. After first year, I did do an internship. It was for operations planning. And while, you know, like, it was a good experience to just like kind of understand what it's like to work a 9 to 5, not quite applicable to where I am right now, but nonetheless, good experience to just find my footing. It was also really hard because I was trying to do Ramadan while working. And overall, this entire year left me feeling very mediocre, if I'm going to be honest. It just felt like an extension of high school almost. Just me working much harder. Like, and at this point, I did not understand, and I did not believe my sisters when they said university times are the times you're going to remember for the rest of your life, or these are your time. This is your time to shine. I just did not understand my older sisters when they said that. All right, let's get into second year, okay, of my degree. I didn't even mention this at the beginning, but I've completed my degree in electrical engineering with a computer engineering minor, okay? And first year is when you choose what stream you want to go into. So I chose electrical engineering. So second year was when I started my electrical engineering, like actual electrical engineering courses. I'm like more than halfway through this, and I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna need more than one can, but we'll make do. Okay, so second year. Let's talk about academics again. Second year is when I started to really get confidence in my academics, and that's because first year I was just so scared about the idea that everyone said it would be so ridiculously hard to do well, but I put in the work, and alhamdulillah, I did do well. And so second year I'm like, hey, this is actually possible. Like, it's not impossible. I can do this. So I really started to get confidence in my academics. And like I said, university was the place to shine for a person like me. University is the place to learn, right? It is the place for knowledge. Not necessarily the place to get a job maybe, but it is the place to learn. And so I thrived in that environment. In classes, I loved it. I was no longer the nerd in an awkward way, but I was the brains in an admirable way, if that makes sense. And I never felt like being a nerd was bad. Let me make this very clear. Even from high school and from when I was young, never felt like being a nerd was bad. I just know societal wise, it was never really rewarded almost. It was always just like, oh, you're a nerd, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a nerd. Okay, so what, right? Now the problem is, the more socially awkward I felt, the more I compensated for that academically. And this was not a healthy dynamic, let me tell you that. The more I felt out of place socially, the more I projected myself in a way that wasn't 100% authentic so I could fit in, right? And at that time, I wasn't very aware of the idea of human connection and how I feel now about relationships. Back then it was very much like me, myself, and I am enough for myself. I don't need anyone else. Hyper independence. Let's not start this therapy session. So the more I felt out of place, the more I projected myself in a certain way to fit in, because subconsciously the humane part of me, the humanness in me, wanted relationships and wanted meaningful friendships and wanted a good support system. And so I would project myself in a way that wasn't really me. And so it felt dirty at the time. It was so exhausting, constantly putting on this character for classes. And when I say character, I'm definitely exaggerating it. It wasn't like this huge thing, but it was definitely a persona. However, the second year was the year where kind of the seed was planted, I'll say. First year was just about what is going on. Second year was where kind of the seed was planted for a flower to start to bud. And I'll explain why. So one, even in first year actually, I just really enjoyed my professors, honestly. Like they facilitated my learning in such a great way and welcomed all of my questions. And I'm really thankful for that. Honestly, for the professors that I've met during my degree, thank you. They have changed my life, and more on that in the overall reflection at the very end. But the professors, I just could thrive in office hours. I felt seen in office hours, where I could just like go on and on about things and ask things and like just like carry on a discussion like, oh, what about this, and then what about that, and then what about that. And they would welcome that sort of discussion, and that made the INTJ in me, honestly, just like cry tears of joy. Because I really love that stuff. I love intellectual conversations. Now, in addition to this, I participated in a special electrical engineering program during second semester. ILS it was called. The main idea of it was a more hands-on version of the electrical engineering program, so students could actually learn to be engineers versus just like hear about what it means to be an engineer and learn some theoretical knowledge. And you actually get a lot more time with the instruments that you work with in electrical engineering. So for example, oscilloscopes, multimeters, blah blah blah. You actually get to just like play around right in lecture with transistors and like a bunch of other stuff that I can't remember the top of my head. MCUs. You have immediate help, lots of TAs. That was the program, and I really enjoyed it. I genuinely feel like ILS made me a better thinker and a better electrical engineer, like an engineer overall. Like to actually like intuitively understand something is completely different from just reading about it on a slide. And I really feel like ILS facilitated the type of learner that I am, where I want to understand how something works. I don't care if it's right. I don't care if I have the right answer. I care about why it's the right answer. Why does it work this way? Tell me why. In addition to all of that, I went on my very first university trip to Bali, Indonesia. It was a community engineering project that I helped with, and we went and did a bunch of community stuff in Bali. I won't go into too much detail about it, but let's say that this was my very first real international trip, and that too by myself. So there was a lot there. I learned a lot about myself, and it really kind of also planted the seed for traveling in my head, which you'll see. It's like an exponential curve for me. This traveling seed, it's gonna bud real quick, and you'll see. Overall though, year 2 was still, I kind of felt the same way. Kind of still felt like university was a little bit mediocre. Nothing really special, and something to get through to get the degree that I wanted. Now COVID obviously didn't help with this. In my second semester, halfway through ILS, COVID hit. Everything went remote, and that most definitely did not help my development socially, because I loved it. I was like, oh, I don't have to, all I have to do is learn. Literally all I have to do is learn. I don't have to participate in the social interactions. I don't have to try to like gauge the social environments. Like all of that stress was taken off my head, and I loved it in the moment. Obviously, not the biggest payoff, but I loved it in the moment. Now, second year, the internship I had during the summer, that was my pivoting point, okay? Have you heard of pivoting points? It's like these, or not pivoting points, turning points. Have you heard about like turning points where it's like this one instance in your life that you can vividly remember where you're just like changed? Like something just like changes for you forever. The internship I had after my second year, that was my turning point. I think to what led me to be who I am today, that triggered it. That internship changed my life, simply changed my life. And more specifically, my mentor from that internship changed my life. And I don't think people understand when I say changed my life. I legitimately, and I want you to understand this, I legitimately mean changed my life, changed my principles, changed how I view the world, helped me understand and break down the values that I have and understand what was serving me and what was not serving me. Changed my life. During the summer, I feel like I really started, for the first time, I started to understand who I was. I started to understand myself, and I guess subconsciously I didn't accept myself, because for the very first time I felt like I accepted who I was and I owned who I was. And I let go of a lot of misconceptions that I held about myself, the people around me, society, just a lot of things that kind of made me a nihilist, honestly. All right, let's talk about year 3. And this was, think about year 3 as the calm after the storm, okay? The storm being the internship I had that irrevocably changed me. Year 3, I went through a lot emotionally. The very first thing is, given how much I had emotionally changed, I was really, really turbulent for basically my 3rd year. I was trying so hard to understand these new ideas that had been brought to my life and trying to understand how I wanted to apply them to my life and try to understand who the new me was, that I basically swinged from one extreme to the other, which is completely normal. I actually heard about this somewhere where when you're on one extreme and you learn better, you swing to the other extreme until you learn to balance yourself out. And that's exactly what I was trying to learn to do. I swung to the other extreme, and then I was trying to learn where I fit, like where were my boundaries. I needed that extremity at that time, but I will say wasn't the healthiest thing, and I was quite rigid at that time. I also let go of an extremely, my longest standing friendship, and it was a really difficult decision. It was a really, really difficult decision, but it's what I needed. And to this day, it makes me very nostalgic thinking about that relationship, but it's what I needed. And you do what you need. And so emotionally, this year was extremely turbulent for me. Other than like what I was going through personally, the entire year was online. It was COVID. Everything had to be done online. Watching a bunch of lecture videos. Third year is known to be the hardest for electrical engineering, and I think engineering degrees in general, and I would concur with that. And so doing this over COVID was so ridiculously difficult, especially for a person like me who asks a gazillion questions, because trying to convey my question without showing something, or trying to like have notes or like write something down so I can like pull it up on my screen and then show you what I'm talking about, so ridiculously difficult. Like I had my BJT class during this time, my CMOS class, and we're talking like hardware stuff. I had like signals during this time, like a build up on signals, so like the disgusting foyer stuff. It was a difficult year to be learning by yourself. Honestly, third year was it's kind of like the middle child, if you ask me. It was that calm after the storm where I'm trying to balance out and just live, just breathe, honestly. Third year passed in a blur of internship applications, because this is when we started to apply for internship year, which is 4th year. We'll get to that. And interviews and video lectures, which sucked the soul out of me, and punching. honestly, MMA. I did mention this. When COVID hit, second semester, that's when I officially began my fitness journey. I had done MMA before, I had worked out before here and there, but that's when I like actually officially picked up MMA as training, and that's literally when fitness skyrocketed for me, and that's why I am who I am today, because of picking up MMA then, like as an official hobby. Because I did MMA for like the longest time, for about a year, and then after that I started getting into other stuff, and now I'm someone who just wants to move in whatever way possible. Okay, but my heart's with MMA. My heart's with MMA. So yes, third year blend of a blur of internship applications, video lectures, and MMA actually. This was one of those like filler years where I just needed to hibernate. After going through so much emotionally and still going through so much emotionally, I needed to hibernate, and while COVID sucked, it really allowed me to do that, which was awesome. Whew. Let's get into year 4, because this is when this was a really, really difficult time. This is one of my hardest years, which is ironic, really, because I had no actual engineering courses. It was internship year. Let me tell you why. And you've been on this journey with me, so you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of good that came out from stuff that was honestly really painful and is still really painful. You probably know what I'm alluding to, but let's get into it. So first things first, let's talk about internships, because I started off 4th year, really summer of 3rd year and on, with my internships. So I'll be honest and say I jumped the gun with my first internship decision, and it wasn't the best fit for the type of engineer I am looking to be, honestly. And after a lot of happenings and discussions and conversations, I decided to move on to a different internship that would serve me better and would be what I'm looking for, to be honest. And I think this is the first time that I'm talking about this. This was a really big learning curve for me personally, because I just don't know when to stop and I don't know when to give up. I would say it's my fatal flaw. You know, Percy Jackson had its fatal flaw? I think it was loyalty. I love Percy Jackson. My fatal flaw is not knowing when to give up. It's awesome because it really, really serves me, but at the same time, I don't know when to stop, when to give up on something. And so I really had to gauge that during this time and understand it's okay to put your hands up and say, I'm out. This is not serving me, I'm out. With that said, around the time I started at my second internship, and the first one, the one that I just talked about, was embedded systems. This one is web development. My eczema hit. And we've been talking about this for a very long time. Almost all of my videos are somehow mentioning my eczema or my eczema journey or something, okay? So if you've been here before, you know what I'm talking about. It's been a life-changing experience, honestly. Like, that's when I really changed my life. My diet, my routines, learning about human biology. That's when I started to love human biology and try to understand, okay, how does the human body work? That's how I fell in love with nutrition and the immune system and the nervous system and learning. And it's just like, I'm learning about biological stuff because honestly, I didn't even take biology in high school. I had no interest in it until it hit me, and I wanted to understand why this was happening to me. I'll be honest and say, when my eczema hit, my life paused. It completely paused for an entire year. September 2021 to September 2022, when I started to Dupixent, And this is like, there's been more going on after Dupixent, but when I started Dupixent, that's when I just got to just breathe a little bit. And I should probably make an eczema series. I will, explaining the entire story and where I am today. But alas, for an entire year, my life was paused. I have no idea how I did my internships. I legitimately have no idea. And I think the only reason why I was able to do them successfully is because they were remote. I would get up from my bed, sit on the computer, do my work, and then sit on my bed at the end of the day. Because I just could not take it emotionally. It was really, really tough emotionally and physically to go through this. I honestly just became even more introverted than I already was and kind of let myself go into the abyss, if I'm gonna be honest with you. I was so fixated on my health and I couldn't feel anything other than the pain I was going through, like physically and emotionally, but more so physically. Like not being able to move your fingers because they're in pain, not being able to move your arms because it hurts. That takes a hit on you. That's a hook right there, okay? So as I was trying to navigate this, and I wasn't just like sitting on my bed. I don't know if I mentioned this on here before, but I experimented with a bunch of different things, and I'm still experimenting. But back then it was ridiculous, the things that I went through and read and tried to understand and increase my knowledge and just trying to tinker with things. Like fourth year was internships plus figure out what's wrong with my body. Now, like I said, there's a lot of good that came out of this. One, my love for the human body, understanding the human body. And two, this is when my spiritual journey really began. Because eczema took such a huge toll on me, I needed something, like something, to keep me hopeful, if I'm being honest. Because I became so ridiculously boggy. And like, how am I supposed to explain that word in English? It means, like, the direct translation is rebellious, but it's not the correct connotation. I just became so numb to it all and so defeated that I needed something to keep me hopeful and afloat, because I'm not that person. Like I said, I don't know when to give up. I don't know when to stop. And one of the things that I admire the most about myself is my ability to move on, to trudge through and figure a way out, and not to stew in what's upsetting me. So that's when my spiritual journey started. And I'm honestly so thankful for this, because I feel like that's been a major part. I feel like my religion has played a big part and a ridiculously huge part in making me who I am today. Ridiculously huge part in mellowing me out. Like I mentioned, I swung to one extreme. My religion is what has allowed me to mellow out and figure out where my boundaries are and how to not be so extreme anymore. So, and many other things, right? So I'm although it was a ridiculously tough time and I'm still going through it, I really value what came out of it. But yeah, even after year 4, it was like, okay, one more year, let's get it done. It was nothing special so far for me, honestly. Even though I had developed into I had started to shift fundamentally into a different person, had new ideas, I hadn't had a chance to practice them, honestly, because internships were remote, sucked into my eczema flare-up, and COVID, right? So I've been stuck in this house, and that's blissful for a person like me who's an introvert and doesn't really engage socially, or didn't at that time, and didn't understand the value socially of social interactions. So even after year 4, I was like, one more year, let's finish this degree. I'm actually genuinely surprised that I have not finished this can yet. Now let's get into year 5. This is when I feel like slowly seeds were being planted into my life, and this is just when everything just like blew up. Like everything just came to fruition, if you will. I don't know what it was that triggered this, but year 5, I became hyper fixated on experimenting with the new ideas I had developed in hibernation. Honestly, year 3 and 4 were hibernation for me. Year 5 was like, okay, let's test out these new theories we have. Let's experiment like the engineer we are. And I really started to test out these new ideas I had related to human connection and relationships being valuable and small talk being valuable. And honestly, valuing the humans around me, if I'm being completely honest, and not just needing yourself. Like understanding what it means to have a support system. I just really wanted to understand if these ideas were valid and if they were valid for me. Did I value human connection? Did I value relationships? Like before I used to say, I don't need this, but do I need emotional support? All these kinds of questions. And so out of the blue, finally put in a social situation, finally talking to people in real life, let's test it out. And because of this testing, I somehow start to feel like I belong, which is so weird because I was talking about this from, in my first year and second year recap about succeeding academically, but still like not really feeling like university was valuable, and I just broke this. And reflecting on that now, it's because I didn't feel emotionally tethered to the experience. There were no emotions really involved. It was very mechanical and robotic. Let's get the grades. Let's do this. Let's do the internship. Let's succeed professionally, blah, blah, blah. But what about me as a person? What about me as a person was alive and thriving, right? Like I love intellectual stuff, but I didn't realize that my subconscious was starved for human connection and humaneness. I would just make conversations with random people too. Like, hey, I really like your energy. Or, hey, I noticed you doing this. Can you explain this to me? Like, just random conversations. Like, zero risk. Very low risk environments. Just say what's on your mind. Be yourself. Be authentic. And just live who you are. Like, I really stopped trying to project a certain persona, and it was like, this is me. This is what you get. Take it or leave it. Honestly, I really started to lean into the idea of authenticity. And I had already developed these ideas during my second year internship, the one that was a turning point for me, like the idea of being authentic. But other than being around my family for 2 years, I had no one to really gauge what it meant to be authentic with. Like, who am I supposed to practice being authentic with? So 5th year, finally around a lot of different people and old friends, it's like, okay, let's see what it means to be me in public. I also really tried my best not to put too much pressure on myself to achieve, and not necessarily achieve, but to do things 100% right. And let me explain what that means. When I commit, I commit. And while this is great for most things, for something that's like you just want to do them once in a while, you don't have to be the best at every single thing, right? I want to be, and that's the goal, but that's not what I needed then. I needed to experiment. I needed to put less pressure on myself. I needed to just try things out. And so I went to chess clubs and chess club meetings. I went to debate club meetings, and I tried different things out, and I just talked to different people and just experimented without being like, okay, I'm going to one chess club meeting. Now I need to go every single week, and I need to become a chess master in X weeks. I tried really hard not to put that pressure on myself, although I kind of did, if I'm going to be honest, because that is me, honestly. but I really tried to hold myself back from it. And it really helped, honestly. It really helped in me enjoying myself. Like, yes, I want to be good at chess because I like the idea of, strategizing, but I just enjoy chess as a whole. Like, why can't I just go and enjoy it? This idea and this practice gave me the room to enjoy what was happening in my life and enjoy the conversations I was taking part of. Now, as part of my final year, in Canada at least, you have a final year engineering project. It's a huge deal. At the very end of the year, you have this huge engineering design fair. There are all winners and all that jazz. We call it capstone. So I had my capstone project. And there's a lot of things that happened during that too that allowed me to learn, but also put to practice like certain ideas of how to manage people and deal with people in professional settings and so on and so forth that I had learned during that second year internship. I'm telling you, that internship changed my life, okay? So I got to put into practice so many ideas that I had been mulling over for 2.5 years, honestly. So it was just like everything culminating and everything just like coming out from the bottom of the earth, and then like all of a sudden one day you have this huge tree out of nowhere because it's just been stewing and growing and becoming strong under the surface of the earth, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if that's the best metaphor, but that's what comes to mind right now. Fun fact, I don't think I've mentioned this, but it is on my LinkedIn. We won first place for the software engineering category at the design fair. We put our blood, sweat, and tears into that in the last week. There's a lot of stuff that happened that only the team will know about, not putting this out publicly. But it was an amazing feeling. Hearing our names called or hearing our project called for first place, we were like, wait, what? It was an amazing feeling. And not doing it alone. So many of my friends won awards too. And I was so incredibly proud of us. Because I remember in first year going to the engineering design fair at the end of the year and thinking, wow, these are such cool projects. Like, this is so much. Like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? How are we going to measure up? And then in my final year, being that person and seeing all of us with these amazing projects and putting in the work and seeing how myself and the people that I've come to know over the years, seeing the way we've grown, it just made me so ridiculously proud of us. At Capstone, after the fair, I remember just walking back to the car and I had this like elated feeling. Like, I just felt so light because I was just so ridiculously proud of my friends and I at that point. I also went on 3 trips during this year. Remember when I mentioned that travel seed had been planted and it's going to like all of a sudden go exponential? Yeah, that's what happened in my last year. Exponential. 3 trips. 2 international, 1 local. Like 1 within Canada to Quebec. I mentioned this. I think I have a whole video on it too. I have 2 videos actually. So yeah, like this year was just everything coming together about what I had come to know and enjoy about life and myself and the way I saw myself. Just like everything come together and somehow like just existing. This year felt like the culmination of all the work I had put into myself and my work over the years, and it made me so ridiculously proud of myself to see myself take a few steps towards even becoming the person I want myself to be. It made me so ridiculously proud how one day I just woke up and I didn't realize that I had grown so significantly in the way that I had wanted so badly back then. And thinking about how young me was just so tired and how much how badly I wanted that, it's amazing. It's amazing. Makes me so ridiculously proud of myself. This is the first year where I didn't feel like my degree was mediocre. And it was sad because it was ending. But for the very first time, I felt like I met people that saw me and that I saw. And someone once said this to me, and I always say someone, but it's that mentor from that internship who said to me, Ruha, all people really want is to be seen and heard. And if you give them that, then it's like, it doesn't matter if you're saying the smartest thing or acting the smartest way or whatever, right? And so I just, for the very first time, felt like I had the support system that I wanted and the friends that I wanted. And it made me so nostalgic that it was ending when I had finally gotten what I was searching for subconsciously. I finally learned in practice about human connection and relationships and about how much I actually wanted that. Shocked me. But me, I actually wanted that and it actually fulfilled me. But now university was ending. But note though, I finally had this support system because I put in the work for it. I put in the work with those relationships. I identified who I felt a connection with and nurtured those relationships, something I hadn't done in the past. So overall, okay, now let's talk about my overall reflection, okay? After going through all of that, I've already mentioned this, but one, incredibly, ridiculously proud of myself. I just don't feel like I would have grown the way I grew and the way that I wanted to if I didn't go through this experience that I've had through university specifically. And for that, I'm grateful. So ridiculously proud of that, and I'm so ridiculously grateful for having had this experience. Now, to add to that, the mentors that I've had through the years, the professors knowingly and unknowingly giving me advice, thank you. Like genuinely thank you. I would not be who I am today, and I would not be moving towards the person I want to be without that insight. And I don't know if I would have had access to that mentorship that specific way in the way that I needed without going through university and meeting these people. From a degree perspective, I actually really like the degree that I did. Electrical engineering, minor in computer engineering. I can do electrical or software. It's a highly competitive field. Like I'm very happy with the degree that I've chosen, not only because I actually enjoy it. I genuinely enjoy the degree that I chose because I have options and it's made me marketable. Right? Like it's a valuable degree that I enjoy and that I cherish. So thank you. And it's also the stream that allowed me to meet my current friends, right? Over the years, developing those relationships, putting the time in. That's how I've met those particular people. So I'm really, really happy with my degree specifically that I chose. I just feel like I've grown so much in the way that I wanted. And the way younger me would be proud of, that it makes me extremely thankful for this experience. I'm so incredibly proud of myself for navigating through this. Thankful for taking the risk and opening myself up to the world the way I have, because it's given me what I want. I also feel like through this entire experience, I found a lot of things about myself, like fitness. It's a huge part of my life. Religion, a huge, probably the biggest part of my life. K-dramas, you know? And I didn't mention this, but during the whole eczema, like my first initial like flare-up, like the really bad flare-up, that's when I started watching K-dramas. So, actually I think a little bit before that. But it was during all that stress time. So overall, I just feel like a lot of who I am I can attribute to this experience. And therefore, overall, my degree was worth it. My university experience was worth the blood, sweat, tears, money, resources, whatever you can think of that went into it. And it's really that. You know, people say this, but I never really understood this, and I'm just understanding this now as I say it actually, is things are what you put into it. If you invest in the experience, if you understand what is holding you back and you tackle that, and you play around with things and you tinker and you try to understand, okay, how can I make this better? What am I missing? What is not giving me joy? What will bring me joy? Then you will get what you want. And then almost every experience is valuable. Almost every experience leaves you feeling this way. And imagine a life like that. Imagine a life like that. So I guess here is to living life more like that. More like this. So with that said, this video is ridiculously long. I do not know how I sat here for this long and how I still have not finished this can, except for the fact that it is now lukewarm. With that said, however, I hope this reflection gives you a few ideas to ponder on and think about, and I hope it brought value. So with that said, you know what I'm gonna say. Until next time.